What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I'm super excited to introduce my next guest to you today. She is just killing it right now. And with over 6 years of diverse experience in the sports industry, working with organizations like the NBA, Adidas, Fox Sports, the Pac-12 networks, BDA Sports Agency, and many, many more, she's created quite a name for herself already. She's a career coach, a speaker, a business professional, and a determined optimist, which I love. And her passion is dedicated to helping people find their dream jobs within the sports industry. So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Adriene Bueno.
Hey everyone, it feels really great to be here. Thanks so much, Corey, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time out of your day and coming to speak to us. Hopefully you can share some stories and some of your experience with us. And again, we're all on this entrepreneurial journey together, trying to just make it work, figure the things out together. So hopefully some of your insight can help inspire those listening today. And, I was doing a little research on you, like I do with all my guests before we jumped on. And I saw a post that you mentioned your height. You're actually only about 5'2". So I'm wondering, like, how did that work with basketball? You're all into sports. Like, that can be a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a fun question. Pretty much, I've actually always been short. So growing up, I played basketball, and I played volleyball and track and a couple other sports. But basketball and volleyball, those sports really require a lot of height. And again, I'm not that tall, so I love playing sports. So, but I was usually the point guard or the setter, which is usually actually like a tall person position in volleyball. But in general, I like to kind of take on the lead position for whatever sport I'm playing, even in we had like powder puff at my high school, which is pretty much girls flag football that like was kind of taken seriously in my school. It wasn't like an official sport or whatever, but I was even like quarterback there. So I love playing sports, but once I got to college, that vision of playing sports kind of like fizzled out because one, I wasn't really interested in playing at the collegiate level. It just didn't even cross my mind. But the second I stepped on campus and was going to football games and basketball games, like that missing element and piece to my life, like really felt like, wasn't really there anymore. And what I had done instead was actually just like throw myself into the sports industry to work in the business, which I hadn't thought about when I was in high school or, even as a kid. But once I got to that, college level, that's kind of when I started attacking, all these different sports organizations to apply to work at and just get a really good vision on how the entire operations of the sports industry works together. So, I played sports growing up, but I'm short, so I didn't make it to the next level, which is fine.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's actually a really cool transition for you because you're still, you're able to still do something in a field that you really enjoyed. And honestly, I can see the parallel. I mean, you're a very driven person. And obviously, like you said back then, you always wanted to be like in the leadership role, whatever the sport was, it was you're playing. Like, I can see how that is manifesting itself in your business and in what you're doing in life. So it's a neat parallel to draw. But what I'm interested in is how you got started coaching others and teaching them how they can get into the sports industry and finding a career path they really enjoy. I mean, how did this all come together for you?
Yeah, so I kind of actually just stumbled into it. Just to kind of take you to the beginning, when I first started looking for jobs in sports, I didn't know anyone at all, like, period. B, I didn't know, like, what jobs even existed. And for most people, they, either think, like, okay, you're either a professional athlete, that X me out of that, or you're a broadcaster. And at the time, I actually, like, hated being in front of a camera. And truthfully, I didn't even watch sports growing up. I hated watching sports. I only liked ever playing it. But once I got to that college level, things changed. But those are pretty much like the two options that you kind of just think of off the top of your head for like sports jobs. So I didn't really know what else was out there. And for me, like, I just, kind of didn't really have much to like work off of in terms of Googling, like, okay, how to get a job in sports, or, even LinkedIn. It was hard to like understand how to, really reach out to people when I was, really early in my professional career. So I didn't understand like the waters for that. But what had happened was over time when I started working at these different sports organizations, I'd be working in different capacities from marketing to PR to social media to, recruiting athletes to come to UCLA where I went to school. And through working through these different organizations, I would have different people coming to me asking, how do I get break into sports? How do I break into sports? And once I started working at the NBA in New York City, I would, kind of duck into different, one-on-one meetings with people who were asking me, like, how do I get into sports? And from that point, I would, advise people, this is how you prep for an interview. This is what your resume should look like. This is the type of experience you should get over time. And at first it was just me giving like my 2 cents, but what had happened was all these people were beginning to get like real results, getting those jobs that they were, trying to reach after for so long. And, in the back of my mind, I realized like, wait, there's a lot of people who want to work in sports. There's these sports management programs and, all these different like sports organizations that like focus on, growing talent and, X, Y, and Z. And no one was actually taking on that role of, here's a career coach who can help you get into the sports industry specifically. You even see it in tech like Google and, Facebook, how to be a product manager or whatever. Like there's people whose businesses are mainly focused on getting talent into those businesses through interview services or, helping them through that job search strategy. So that's kind of what inspired me to start my business in career coaching.
That's really cool, and it's a very organic process that seemed like that happened to you, and I love that because that's a lot of times when the best business ideas come is when you're really just scratching your own itch and understanding that you had this problem that you managed to figure out, and now you have the solution, like you figured it out, and there's other people that have the same problem, so you might as well offer it to them, and especially if they're asking you like the question, it validates the idea as well. So that's really cool to see how you were able to transition, into providing that service for people. And obviously, the internet and digital media, I'm sure, has made it a little bit easier to reach those folks. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how is the internet impacting your business as a career coach, and what are some of the things that are exciting you about that?
Yeah, I mean, my entire business is online, so I'd say it has everything to do with it. And even in terms of like lead generation, I haven't really spent any money on ads, like paid ads at all. Everything's been organic. So, and even on top of that, like all the leads that I've had have actually come to me, and I would credit that primarily to LinkedIn. And I don't know, like if previous people you talked about with this or anything, but there's been a huge shift in terms of how LinkedIn is being leveraged in terms of like organic reach and really engaging with the right customer base or B2B, B2C, whatever it may be. LinkedIn's really the hot spot. And I forget the stat, but there's like some stat going around that people who are on LinkedIn have like a much higher income threshold than the likes of Facebook or Instagram or whatever, because everyone's there for professional networking purposes, and have that drive, or at least some level of drive to get to that next level or reach different people. And I've seen a lot of great influencers that are really starting to take a segue on LinkedIn to really carve out a niche for themselves on that platform. And it's something that I'm using now to kind of elevate my business in a new way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, because no, I haven't had anybody really talked about LinkedIn and how they're using it. I mean, what are some strategies, or what are some of the steps that you're taking to generate some business from there?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like the number one thing that LinkedIn, if you're trying to create any leads on LinkedIn, is really to just provide value. It's not like those traditional ads of whatever it might be, like buy my thing. I'm just going to give you a bunch of free information or free guidance or free services, whatever that is in your business. And for me personally, that's just giving out like, my best interview tips, or, the type of sports businesses that exist out there in the sports industry, so people can kind of get their head out of, I could only work for a team or be a broadcaster, or, be a professional athlete. Like there's more beyond that. And that's kind of been that like tripwire to get that, to get the right clients and customers and clientele to come, back to me through, whether it be like LinkedIn direct messaging or checking out my website.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I like that because, as you say, LinkedIn is really the professionals network, if you will. It's business professionals, and there are a lot of people listening today that are in a job or they're in a career where they've built up, some corporate skills, and maybe they want to go and share that, somehow and create their own business around that. And LinkedIn is a great place for them to go to because that's where some of their best customers and clients are going to be. Especially like you said, the people that are on there are driven to typically reach for something more than what they're currently doing. It takes work to be on any social platform. So if they're out there doing it, like there's a good indication that they want to learn and grow. So I love that advice, and really, like you said, just providing value, coming value first. This is something we talk about a lot on the show, where the key to success really long term is to come with that mindset of providing value first, and it just works. I think it works. It's ubiquitous to any platform, but obviously with LinkedIn, like you say, it's more of the professional that's going to be on there. So they're not there to look at silly cat videos or to hear your next business opportunity. They want a solution to a problem. And if you can provide those solutions through, blog posts or videos or whatever it may be, then they can find you and they can start to seek you out, for more solutions and hire you and whatever it may be at that point. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then also, like, is there anything, that you are finding success with in terms of the paid side of things, or is everything for you pretty much organic and that's where you focus?
Yeah, I mainly focus on organic just right now based off of where I am in my business, but also just, realizing that just because like I haven't really tailored or like really, nailed down how to really target that audience on Facebook or Instagram. I'm kind of just tapping and tapping my feet in the water for LinkedIn paid ads, but so honestly, like I'm really just still figuring that part out for in terms of paid content. But in where was I going? I had a thought that I really wanted to share. I'm going to come back to it.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you can grow your business on organic growth alone, that's amazing, right? And then from there, it's just scaling with paid ads once you figure out the targeting, like you say. But, it brings it back to the fact that everybody can do this and anybody can go out and provide a solution to a problem. And, as long as you actually genuinely know what you're talking about and can talk on it intelligently, you can create content out there and provide value to people that will naturally want to hire you. Another thing that, and I don't know if you mentioned this in your journey, but something that I always talk about is doing the work for free in the beginning. Like if it's something you don't know how to necessarily get into, or you don't have any experience, or you don't have, testimonials or anything to show, like come in, offering to do some of that stuff for free in the beginning to get, build up your chops and get that experience, and then you can leverage that moving forward. Is that something you have done? I mean, well, with the internships, I guess you did that in a way, right?
Yeah. So I guess, to really touch on that, and I remember what I was going to say in terms of paid ads, but it wasn't necessarily aligned to paid ads, but this kind of answers both those questions. Is a tool that I actually use is ClickFunnels, and ClickFunnels has really helped me get that lead generation to pretty much give out free free services, quote unquote. And for me, that was a free live webinar where I was going an hour and a half on talking on like exactly strategy to get into the sports industry, from finding the right job to networking with the right people, even if you have zero connections, to actually landing the job and all the elements in between that. And I had launched that campaign, and I got a couple, I think like 100 people into that funnel, and it was the first time I really had like a really big lead generation that was successful. And I hadn't used ClickFunnels previously before that. So one tool I recommend if you're trying to get that get your email list up and get those free free testimonials by providing free services that would be a tool that I would, recommend that people check out. But absolutely do free services if you have no testimonials to start out with. And, if possible, and if you're comfortable, do some live videos, because that really, like, you get direct answers and questions to what people actually want to know as you're talking it through.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm a big fan of ClickFunnels as well. I use it everywhere in my business and always recommend it to my clients. But you're absolutely right. Doing a webinar like that is a great way to provide free value to people and literally demonstrate how you can help them, right, with whatever solution it is you provide. And at the same time, you're building a list of leads that you can continue to market to along the way. That's a really good strategy and a really easy way to just, put goodwill out there and get your name out there in whatever industry you choose. So for sure, I think that's definitely a good strategy. And now I want to talk to you a little bit about another topic, which is that work-life balance, and managing everything and living a life that you actually enjoy at the same time. So I know you just recently graduated college, right? I think I saw some pictures.
2016.
Oh, so a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, now starting your life after that chapter, running your business, managing everything, like what are some strategies you're using to keep it all together?
Yeah. So I kind of want to jump back to right after I graduated. So when I graduated and I was working in my corporate job, pretty much all my time and energy was in the job. And I hadn't really thought about much else because, one, I was like new in the job. I just wanted to get as much experience as possible, and that was kind of my primary focus. But one thing I recommend a lot of people do, because I was living in New York City at the time, and I basically moved from New York to Denver, Colorado, and I was living in I still live in Denver now. But once I left the city life and went to somewhere that wasn't the city, my entire mind just opened up to oh my God, I have to think about way more than what I was thinking about before. And not only because, I quit my corporate job, but because I really eliminated all those distractions by, moving somewhere that isn't as distracting, So, if possible, just kind of find a place where you can focus, and you don't necessarily have to leave your entire city or country or whatever, but just you really finding your space to focus and really just kind of zone out on whatever it is that you need to do. That's kind of one piece of advice I would give. But more recently, I actually invested in a passion planner, and I don't know if you heard of it, but it's really cool. It's actually created by someone who I went to school with. But pretty much the passion planner breaks down your life from month to day, but in a way that's very different than any traditional planner that you have. And it really helps you organize your goals that you have for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, for the next 3 years, for your life, all of those things basically in one little planner. And you can even download a free PDF version of it if you really want to try it out. But it's kind of changed the way I've organized and prioritized my day, because even though I love my Google calendar, it's not enough. I need to physically write stuff down, and it's taken me up to this point of my life to figure that out. So that's kind of one way that I've been really able to prioritize okay, these are the personal things I need to do for my day, and then these are the things that I need to do for my business. And to even add on to that a little further, recognizing the importance of chunking chunking out your days to specific activities based off of where your brain is. And I didn't really believe in this stuff before I started my business. I've gotten way more into personal growth since then, but pretty much it's exercise in the morning, because I know myself, I'm not going to do it later in the day. It's not going to happen. And then, after that, all the creative work that I can do in the early half of the day, because I know my body, and a lot of people are probably this way too, where it's that after lunch period where you just don't want to do anything and your brain doesn't want to work. So I kind of throw that in the early half of the day too. And then, maybe dedicate an hour or two to emails. But that's kind of how I've figured out a way to segment my days in terms of workflow / personal life stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you said a lot of things that are really critically important, I think, to managing anything. First off, being removing yourself a little bit from the situation. I think that's kind of what you were talking about when you went from the city to a space that wasn't so distracting. I mean, again, it doesn't have to be that extreme. I was just doing another interview with a guy who went and moved to another country, like you mentioned. It does not have to be that extreme, but the idea is that you are just removing yourself from the noise, at least for enough time to regain that focus. Because sometimes, when we're just in the minutia of it all, it's hard to see, what's actually going on, and we get overwhelmed, and before you know it, it can seem like it's a much bigger problem than it actually is. So
Yeah.
I love that insight. Just removing yourself a little bit to be able to get a new perspective can a lot of times help you move through whatever it is you're working on in life. And then you mentioned also like writing down in your planner, the passion planner, which is it's a great name for a planner for sure. And
Yeah.
but putting pen to paper, like you said, like as opposed to having a digital copy of it on Google or whatever. I agree with that. I'm very much a tactile person, and for me, like it's like reading an ebook versus reading an actual book. Like, yeah, you'll still have value and you still get stuff there, but for some reason the brain works, at least for me, and it sounds like for you too, it's a little bit different. You see the pages, you can flip back and forth, and even like if you want to write in the side space or whatever, like that physical tactile thing
Yeah.
helps so much, and it's just a great way to like put your brain out on paper and visualize, what you have to do throughout the day. And then the last piece that you mentioned, which again, super critical, is the self-awareness, understanding like I am a certain way. Like you said, I have to work out in the morning because if I don't, it's not going to happen,
Yeah.
or I mean, focusing on, and I think that works for everybody, is the creative, anything that's creative or that requires your creativity, to try to get that done first thing in the day while you still have a lot of energy and while you're still, motivated. Cause yeah, towards the end of the day, we start thinking about relaxing sometimes, taking the time to kick our feet up, or if you eat a bunch at lunch, for sure, you're not going to do crap after that. So,
Yeah.
but that self-awareness is really important. And I think it takes some introspection to get to that point. And you mentioned also that, like the whole personal development space wasn't something you really even considered or thought about until you started working in your own business. And I've seen this parallel happen with every business owner I've talked to, that, you know, like personal development is a part of becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner. But I'm curious, like, why do you think that is? Like, why was it that you weren't interested in it beforehand, but then once you started looking at business, it became something that was important to you?
This is such a good question, and it's something that like I've always wanted to talk to someone else about with, like just more in depth, but it's hard to find a lot of people who relate to this.
Yeah.
But um I'll be real with you, like I would be at Barnes and Noble and I would, pass by the self-help section. Or I don't know why I even put up fake quotations, but I would pass by it and I would just brush it off like, oh, that's a bunch of woo, whatever. Like I don't know what it was about that just didn't interest me, but maybe I just, wasn't open to it. But again, I think it had to do with, kind of removing myself from different situations because again, when I was living in the city, like I, instead of reading, what I read now, which is a lot of like nonfiction, self-help, personal development books, I was, reading a bunch of, fiction. I read the entire Harry Potter series when I was living in New York, because I think for me at that time, what I wanted to was actually just like kind of escape from what I was in, which was like always working 24/7 on like all the time to now like, okay, let me take a step back and reflect on what things I need to accomplish in my entire life. Like not, just like in a super daunting way, but just more so in like, I only have so much time on this earth and I need to do what's best for me and make myself better. Um, and I think, when it comes to having your own business, you have to, again, be very wary of your time. And I think actually the most important element of owning your own business and running your own business is your health, because if you're not healthy, then kind of everything can fall apart. If you're early on and you may not have scaled everything up and have a team of however many people, but for people who are really in that like solopreneur stage and small team stage, if you're not there and you're not on, like everything can again fall apart. So I think that personal development piece is crucial to business growth, if that answers the question.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I mean, really, I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said that we're trying to escape our reality, and a lot of times when you're living a life that isn't fulfilling and you're not happy with, everything you do outside of the work that you have to do is an attempt to escape. I mean, I I totally hear you when you say that, before you were reading like fiction and you were reading novels and stories about fantasy, that is an escape for your mind, right? That's what it is. It's a story. It's something, it's a place for you to go to escape the reality that you're in. It's the same reason why we watch TV, why, we watch anything that is just entertainment, right? It's literally just to escape our current reality. But as soon as you fall into a way of being or a path that is clearly passion based or is like fulfilling you on some level, all of a sudden you become much more interested in it, right? And you're no longer trying to escape that reality. So now it's about, okay, how can I develop myself further to get better results, to get faster results, to be more of an expert in this field? And I think it's a funny journey that we all end up going on, and some of us meet that journey much later than others. Obviously, you were very early to meet that journey, which I'm very hopeful and happy that you were able to do that. Because for me, I'll be 33 this year, and it was only 5 years ago when I started thinking about personal development and mindset stuff, and it was because I was also in a position that was making me miserable. My job was making me miserable, and the people I were working with were miserable. And I realized, like, man, there's got to be something more, and instead of wanting to always escape it, fortunately, I found a podcast much like this one, and it started opening my mind up to other opportunities. So it's beautiful, and I love everything you said, and I really appreciate you sharing that story too, because I know it's tough to be vulnerable sometimes, but it's in that vulnerability and that experience that we can all learn from the things that you learn. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Adriene, I want to ask you, what is a piece of advice, that you would give yourself, knowing everything you know now? Like, what's a piece of advice you'd give yourself maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Man, that's a good question. I'd say, like, my number one piece of advice is just to like not be perfect, because for me, when I, and this goes for like even when I was trying to get my corporate jobs, like all of that, because I'm very much a perfectionist. And one thing that I've realized in business, that in starting a business and all the months leading up to starting the business, is that if you're trying to be perfect, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And the entire process of going through, realizing, you want to start a business, or, you want to do something that no one else is doing. Even for me, like, that was working in sports, because, parents and, my parents didn't really care what I was doing, but growing up, they're like, be a lawyer, be a doctor, whatever, like those traditional paths, because that's what is normal. And you can get that right because there's, tests that you can take and, whatever that might be. And you could, be perfect in that way. But when it comes to starting a business, it's like, there's so many different things out there. And one thing that can just really, stop a lot of people from starting to begin with is that perfectionism mindset. Like, this has to be right. I always have to do this perfect. This has to be great because I took this test, and when I took tests in high school, they were perfect, and I studied perfectly, and that's, I went from here to here because I did everything perfect. But in business, that's not how it works. You have to kind of test and trial and, go through those errors to realize, what works, what doesn't work. And I'm still going through this process to this day, and I don't think I'm ever going to stop, because, again, perfection can cause paralysis. And if you, are stuck in that perfectionist mindset, you'll never get to, that result that you want. And I guess for me, that one piece of advice is, don't be perfect, just be imperfect and do it the best you can, and just execute.
I love that. That's really great advice. And, I've said this before, but yeah, it's imperfect action beats perfect inaction every single day, you know? And
Absolutely.
like you say, just do something, right? And really, it boils down to just being yourself, and presenting yourself for who you are. And what's funny is when you start doing that, people naturally gravitate towards you,
Mhm.
when you're out there trying to project something that you're not, or trying to make yourself look bigger than you are, or what some people call faking it until you make it, like it, people see through that, they see through that facade, and they can see that you're not comfortable and you're not authentic and you're not being who you truly are. So that's a great piece of advice. And hopefully all of you listening, you take that to heart, because it really is the catalyst to growth and becoming anything that you want to become. So awesome, Adrienne. Well, again, it's been a blast. I really appreciate your time here today. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and what you got going on in your world?
Yeah, thanks so much, Corey, for having me. So, pretty much, you guys can find me at my website, adrienebueno.com, ADRIENEBUENO.com, or on LinkedIn. So, Adriene Bueno. And, go ahead and shoot me a message and let me know that you listen to this podcast when you shoot me your request. And again, just one little piece of advice: if you're ever requesting anyone on LinkedIn, always send a personal message, no matter if they're your best friend or you've never met them. Make it personal to them specifically. Just
Awesome.
my little career coach coming out, but seriously, do it because it's really important.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you guys can find me there, and if you are struggling to leave your corporate job that may even be like your quote unquote dream job, because for me that was definitely the case for me when I was working at the MBA. But if you feel like you might be stuck there and are trying to get out of it, or trying to start your own thing on the side just to find whether it be your new next career opportunity or even your new business, go ahead and hit me up there as well.
Love it. I love it. There you have it, guys. Definitely go check out Adrienne, and I will link her website down below in the show notes for sure. Um, Again, it's been my pleasure to have you on today, and I really appreciate your stories and your experience that you shared with us. So thank you so much, and I will catch you on the next one.
All right, appreciate it, Corey.